My journey of 1,000 snowflakes started with a small piece of buck's point lace, in which I just needed one more ground to break the monotony of the grid. Make a frame as you would a spider, and voila! Adding in a snowflake on a buck's point grid seemed logical. But this trick only works for one of the many arrangements that they could have, and that is when it is framed like a torsion spider. You can't really see the ring pairs on this image because I worked the piece in two colors of thread, and when they are twisted together, the lighter color disappears. The pattern for the piece shows the diamond of the snowflakes a little better. When I started plotting them into the shape that I wanted to interpret as a snowflake ground, the fourth motif went outside the shape too far to my liking. And that is when I realized that when the snowflake is framed, it doesn't matter how it aligns with the previous one. The back of the pricking shows the slight offset better. Take a look at the fourth diamond shape in the middle of the pricking. And the surprising result is that the pattern started to follow the gentle curve of the shape, simply by being interrupted with an offset frame. This is really where the idea was born that a ground could be interpreted as a collection of modular units. The structure of the point ground laces, chantilly, bucks, torchon, tondeur, they all depend on a simple geometry. And that geometry is used in the ground as well as the clothwork. Two pairs meet at a pin and make a stitch. For the clothwork, to make a weaver, you also just need two pairs. One becomes a passive and the other a weaver. In order not to have to repeat 5 place names when I want to refer to this family of techniques that they all share, I started to refer to this technique as 2-pair grounds and 2-pair clothwork. 4-pair clothwork, Binche, Mechlin, Valenciennes, Flanders, they need 4 pairs for every pin on the ground, and they also need 4 pairs to make a weaver and to keep it in its place. When worked with a gimp, the gimp smooths the outlines of the slightly stepped clothwork. The makers of 4-pair clothwork laces without a gimp evolved a technique of using the first 2 weavers as contour pairs. The contour pairs do the job of the gimp in that they smooth out the contours of the stepped shape. This piece illustrates the use of contour pairs well. Certain geometries interrupt the contour pairs, like shapes with corners or undercuts, Mickey Mouse ears, if you will. This graphic overlay of 3 samples show the critical difference between the 3 forms of clothwork. 2-pair laces make a new weaver at the top of the shape, and that weaver weaves to and fro across the whole of the shape, and it catches the incoming pairs as the shape gets wider. 4-pair laces create a weaver passive coupling with 2 incoming pairs. The weaver weaves across to the other side, catches 2 incoming pairs. The pairs just caught become a new weaver passive coupling. 4-pair laces without a gimp apply the same principle, but the first 2 weavers become contour pairs. First the contour pair on the one side, and the second weaver becomes the contour pair on the other side. They are also the last 2 weavers to get thrown out. I didn't have access to beautiful historical examples like these, so to learn the kind of bench that I wanted to make, I made an existing pattern by Ulrike Wolker, based on a historical lace, and in this piece, painstakingly marking the progress on a voodoo board, pinboard, 1 weaver at a time, I learned the basics of 4-pair clothwork and contour pairs, and how fundamentally a snowflake can be made with any amount of pairs, even an odd number of pairs, by simply applying a few basic principles to whatever amount of pairs you have available to make the motif. My first attempt at applying the technique involved working off a Chinese ink brush painting. I underestimated how thin the silk floss was. But the result, iffy clothwork and all, was pleasing for me and very satisfying to make. Snowflake grounds come in a staggering amount of ways in which they can tessellate a surface. These are relatively easy to figure out if you are only working the ground. Working them together with more elaborate figurative elements remained an unsolved mystery for me. The next serious attempt to combine two-pair clothwork and snowflakes resulted in the beginnings of a systematic way to do so. This particular arrangement of snowflakes is framed, but the frames overlap a little horizontally, creating a second shape between the snowflakes. The design again based on a Chinese ink brush painting of a crow. I tried a workaround where every pinpoint of the snowflake was plotted at 1.5 grid intersections, while the point ground remained plotted at every intersection. It worked up okay at first, but every now and again I ran out of pairs and I needed to add in more, and often ended up having to throw out those same pairs again, going back into the snowflake ground. Taking a closer look at this geometry revealed the 1.5 system of plotting out a snowflake flawed, especially when it comes to more elaborate frames and ring pairs. In this more elaborate ring-paired arrangement, one would have to add in pairs. And in this traditional honeycomb arrangement of snowflakes, one would need to add in pairs for every vertical pair of the frames. But I noticed a honeycomb shape on the side of each snowflake, and I wondered if that wouldn't be an easier geometry to work with. Instead of thinking in diamonds, to think in honeycombs. If you connect a ring of 6 honeycomb holes and you plot a pinpoint in the center of each honeycomb shape, there'd be enough pairs to make a large snowflake. You have 6 pairs entering the shape and 6 pairs exiting. A ring of 4 honeycomb shapes give you a small snowflake, and with a bit of calculation, a checkerboard snowflake ground that is more square than the squat arrangement one would normally draw on an isometric graph paper. And this became the basis of point fusion, the system of using grounds as modular units that allows you to cluster grounds in close proximity. First taught as online workshops during the lockdown, but now available as an online course at theadventurouslacemakers.com. The idea of using a honeycomb grid to design more elaborate snowflakes took hold. Seeing how irregular historical snowflakes are, and how they come in all manner of shapes and sizes, how about clustering more elaborate arrangements of honeycomb shapes together to create the clothwork motifs? Something like this. This is a very geometric way to design, almost a 4-pair version of torchon. But the result is interesting, and it might be a way to wrap your head around Binche and Flanders clothwork that would be too daunting to approach other than tracking thread movements on someone else's diagram with the voodoo board. This is the theme for the workshop that I'll be teaching at Lacecamp. These are the kinds of shapes that I'll show you how to draw on a Paris ground graph paper. Using worksheets that'll give you lots of practice. Small snowflakes, large snowflakes, conjoined twin snowflakes, monster snowflakes, and also a workaround for drawing horizontal starts and finishes, and trails. Knowledge is power. And who knows, from Robot Binche to Point de Fées might not be a too far jump. Once you understand the clothwork principles, with a bit of practice you'd be able to improvise this on a rough pricking with just an outline. Thank you. I'm looking forward to spending some time with you.